Morning to all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we shall continue our discussion on introduction to risk instruction sets. We have already seen in the last class that how risk machines are different. So if you remember, we were talking about these things. Okay. What are the basic differences between CISC and RISC? We just looked into it. With some examples, we have also tried to understand. Now, let us continue our discussion in the same line. We shall now introduce the typical RISC instruction sets. Okay. Now, any operation, let's consider an operation. Say an operation if I ask you that an operation A equals to B plus C needs to be performed in a you are trying to mute me. Don't mute me. I cannot see that when I'm getting muted. So please, someone please let me know when I am muted. Okay, unless I say explicitly mute, I am not muted. Okay, so please let me know. So an operation A equals to B plus C needs to be performed in a processor. Okay. Now, can someone tell me that how this operation, where from I can get the operands, and at the beginning of the system when the machine starts, how do you expect that this operation can be performed? What are the preconditions that we require for this operation? I just want to know the preconditions. So my objective is to perform A equals to B plus C. I have not explicitly mentioned about what is A, what is B, and what is C, and where are they. So can someone tell me that what are the preconditions for executing this operation in any processor? When you switch on the processor.
So we should be able to store B and C and know the location.
Right. So when you talk about location, what do you mean by location? See, you'll have to always remember what is the high level organization of the system. You have the CPU here, and this is the memory, and this is a stored program architecture. Now, you cannot store the program inside the CPU, that we have already looked into it. Inside the CPU, there is no storage. Inside the CPU, there is no storage. There are temporary storage, which are used during computation. We cannot store a program inside the CPU. So where do we store these programs?
In memory.
Right. So we store this program in memory. So even this particular instruction is also stored in memory. Now, how it is stored? That we need to write an assembly program, assembly language program to convert this instruction into assembly language instruction, convert this high level instruction into assembly language instruction. Now at the beginning, when the system is still not running, what do you expect these A, B and C values will be?
Garbage value.
Garbage values.
No, but where? Let's assume that the values are given. But if the values are given, so where it is? These are variables actually. A, B, C, these are variables. They are not any place inside the CPU. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
These are variables. So if these are variables, they must be stored in memory. Okay. So the program to perform the operation, the above operation, and the operands are initially stored in memory. Do you have any question from this statement? If I make a statement like this, the program to perform the above, this is an operation. I need to convert it into a program. This is not a program. This is an operation, high level instruction. You can call high level instruction, high level operation. Okay. I need to convert it into program. So what I'm writing, the program to perform the above operation and the operands are initially stored in memory. Now, don't you have any confusion from this? I told you the system is starting, okay, and you need to do this execution. Do you have any question in your mind at this point?
Sir, we will have to write to memory first.
Right, exactly. So who writes to this memory? You do not have explicit access to the memory. This is a valid question.
The designer.
So it's not the designer actually. So to store something into the memory, you need a mechanism. Okay. That means we need a mechanism to store something into the memory. Now this mechanism is not an external mechanism. Like you will open up the memory separately and you will manually enter. Forget about 8085. 8085 where we can explicitly write into the memory, but still that writing into the memory is not done without the help of CPU. It means this is the first program. This program is written into the memory and this program is written into the memory with the help of CPU. Now the question comes here. If I want to ensure that this will be executed by CPU, I need to store a program. Now by this second logic, we need to store this program into the memory. That needs the help of CPU. So when something is written to memory by the CPU, it's again a program. It's again a program. So which is the first program? So which is the first program? This is very important. It's like chicken egg problem. Which comes first? I would like to execute this program A equals to B plus C. So first, for execution of this program, I need to store this program into the memory, somewhere in the memory. Let's assume that this is the program. Program for A equals to B plus C. Now, who stores this program here and how it is stored? Because you cannot directly go to the memory and write something. Memory is connected to the processor only. If you look into the diagram, this is data bus, this is address bus. From external world, you cannot write it to the memory. So even if you would like to write the program here, you'll have to go through this channel. This is a very tricky part. It's actually a chicken egg problem. Okay. So can now someone tell me a possible solution to this problem? If I would like to write a program here, I need to take help of another program to store it. Now who stores that program? So keep on going on. You dig into the things, you will come to a root cause that somebody must write something in the memory without the help of this particular CPU so that I can use it. So any guess that how it can be dealt with?
Sir, operating system doesn't it?
Operating system itself is a program.
Yes, sir, it loads another program to write into.
No, that's the question. You are right that operating system loads it. Now the question is, operating system itself is a program. How the operating system gets executed here? Operating system is not outside memory. It is also inside the memory. So you need to store the operating system here. And if you need to store the operating system, you'll have to take the help of CPU. Operating system is a larger program. That's it. It's a larger program with more functions, with more access, granting facilities.
So
That's it.
maybe the CPU could be built in a way that it loads a certain part of the disk into the memory, and that is built into the
CPU,
circuitry of this.
No,
circuitry.
but you are saying that CPU is responsible for that, but CPU is a generic device. It's a generic device. It does not distinguish between whether it's an operating system program or it's a user program. The CPU is a generic device. It never discriminates between two instructions. One is from operating system and one is from user program, unless specifically mentioned for some tasks. Those instructions can also be used in user program, but with certain restrictions.
Sir, it might be that there is certain program like bootloader, I think, that is written in the memory in a certain location, and the CPU's program counter initially is set to that, and when we power on, that program is loaded, and that is responsible for loading the operating system or any other program.
Absolutely right, Sushant. This is the right answer. Absolutely right. You're bang on. So it means there is something which is there in the memory. Now the question arises here that who writes that? that bootloader program you are talking about, somebody has to write it into the memory. So that is an external process. That is an external process. So while you are writing a bootloader program into the memory, okay, you take the help of additional hardware. So these lines will be connected through additional hardware so that you can manually edit these memory locations. So that's why those bootloader portion is usually kept as read-only memory. Once written, it cannot be erased. Once written, it cannot be erased. Why? If you erase it, the next time the machine boots, it will not find a valid bootloader so that it can actually load the operating system. So now if I, draw a more precise conceptual diagram, it looks like this. This portion is ROM. And you know that what is ROM? This is read-only memory. And this is your secondary storage device. Again, these are conceptual diagram. Okay. This is a secondary storage device. What happens? Observe the sequence. CPU. There is a special register that is called PC. Initial address equals to, can someone tell me what will be the initial address? Yes, you can talk about 0000 or actually the starting address of the bootloader. So if the program counter is loaded with the start, now how this is done automatically? So whenever you press a reset button or switch on power on button, what happens? There is an internal circuitry here which loads the program counter with a specific value. This can be 00, this can be XXXX. Now, when you create this ROM, you must know that what is the value it is loaded. So that you go to the memory location by a different way, external approach, you go to the memory location and you write a program manually here, which is the bootloader program. Now, if the first address is loaded here, what will happen? Because I told you, processor never stops. What it does? It starts executing the program from here. Now, what is written here? Now, this bootloader program knows that where is your operating system. So what it does? It now brings the operating systems here in some portion of the memory. Okay. And it loads at the end of the bootloader, it actually loads the starting address, the operating system with the PC. Then the machine starts. Because once the operating system gets here, there are many functions here. It can help you to use the keyboard, to use the display, to take the inputs from A, B, C, all these inputs can be taken from keyboard. or any other input device, mouse, keyboards, microphone, whatever input devices. Because operating system has all those functions. So this A, B, C now can be entered through a keyboard and they can be stored here. Not only ABC, the program to execute this ABC can also be written here. Because you will be writing through keyboard, you will be entering the program through keyboard. So it will go here. And once the entering is done, you can actually ask the operating system to load your program. That's the call of execution. If you try to correlate in operating systems lab, what I was explaining this procedure, that this is the program I am writing, but this is still not a process unless I hand over the starting address of the program to the operating system and operating system enters it into the process control or process table. And when its tenure comes, the starting address will be loaded with the program counter so that this program gets executed. This sequence has to be clearly understood, because this is a sequence. What happens whether you talk about multi-core processor, multi-processor system, simple processor, very advanced processor, everyone has to go through this process. Every system has to go through this process.
What is the work of bootloader?
Because this bootloader loads the operating system from secondary storage device. This is secondary storage device. It loads the operating systems from secondary storage device to the primary memory. This is primary memory. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So if I write down the steps, now let me formally write down the steps. What I was explaining through diagrams, let me formally write in. So steps, the bootloader gets executed. The loader loads the operating system through some special functions. Why I'm writing special functions? Because it may require a larger loader. Bootloader is a very simple program. Operating system loader may require more complex operations. So that's why it may load special functions, and then those functions will load the operating system. Then OS gets loaded and takes the charge of the processor. So now OS takes the charge of the processor. Now everything is controlled by operating system. After that, OS provides interface to the user for interacting with the system. What interface? It may provide keyboard interface, display interface, mouse interface, whatever interface is provided. User writes the program into the memory through the OS functionalities. OS loads the user program when its term arises. The program gets executed and the outputs, if any, are delivered to the user. These are the steps. So these steps are needed. Actually, these steps are very important to understand the concept of operating system as well as how architecture helps to support this. That's why I am currently, probably what I am teaching is a combination of both the things. Okay, I shall come to the architecture part from now onwards because this part was very important so that you can understand that what are the steps. Tell me if you have any doubt, I can clear it.
Sir,
Ah,
sir, in the second step, when the bootloader loads the OS, so does it load the entire OS or just a part of it?
it is basically it loads the part of the operating system, and that part loads the remaining part of the operating system whenever needed. Once the basic functions of the operating systems are loaded, then there is no function of bootloader. Okay. Again you restart the machine, again the bootloader will come into effect. Because when you restart the machine, the first address which is loaded in the program counter is the starting address of the bootloader. The same process is followed. So 100 times you run the program, operating, 100 times you switch off the machine, switch on the machine, same thing happens. Unless there is some corruption in the memory where the operating system is loaded. Obviously, because bootloader is a small program, it cannot load the whole operating system. Whole operating system has many functions at many places. So it loads some basic functions which are good enough to load the remaining portion of the operating system. That's why I did not actually elaborate more. The bootloader loads the operating system through some special functions. I have not explicitly mentioned that what are those special functions. This is a larger process. Loading the operating system module wise is a complex process. Is that clear up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Good. So now,
Sir,
yes.
because of this, is there like issue of OS and RAM compatibility? That bootloader is programmed certain way and OS is written in certain way.
What do you mean by RAM compatibility?
So like certain OS, because the bootloader is hard written, like ROM it's in ROM, right? It cannot be changed. The bootloader is
Right.
written into the RAM.
Hmm.
So like it is written in a certain way, so the OS has to be written accordingly, something like that. Like,
No,
is
it's
there a
not like that.
compatibility issue?
See, there has to be some handshaking, obviously. There has to be some handshaking. Now, this bootloader is actually independent of whether you are using operating systems like Windows or Linux or any other operating system. Actually, you raised a valid point here. There has to be some basic handshaking between the operating system functions and the bootloader. Okay. So if you actually explore the process of installation while you freshly buy a computer from market, assuming that there is no pre-installed operating system there. Assuming that there is no pre-installed operating system is there. So there is only one program, that is bootloader and BIOS. BIOS is also a program which is hard-coded that checks the hardware before it actually loads the bootloader. There is a program that's called BIOS and post power on self-test. Power on self-test is a safe, the first program which runs, which checks the all hardwares. Okay, that's mandatory. You need to check it that whether a keyboard is working, mouse is working, all these things are working or not. So that's a manufacturer provided program which runs when you switch on. That's called power on self test, POST. Okay. Now once this post is over, then comes BIOS. Okay. BIOS has certain options where some portion is fixed, some codes are fixed, and some portion of the BIOS, they are backed up by battery. If you open up your laptop, or don't try to open up your new laptop, if you have ever, get a chance to open up a desktop computer, you'll find that we actually use a battery, CMOS battery. Now that CMOS, why you require the CMOS battery? Because there are certain options which can be changed by the user, not the manufacturer, depending on the user's requirement. For example, adjusting the time, adjusting the date, adjusting the options of loading the operating system. Which one will be taken first, which one will be taken second. So these options are, given into a RAM location. Now, every time you do not want to change those options, that's why there is a BIOS backup given. Okay. So if the battery goes, if the battery is drained out, often you find that your date and time is not maintained. That's because those are user inputs. And those date and particularly date and time, if you switch off the machine, how the computer keeps on checking the time, because next time you boot your machine, you get the current time. How do you get it? That's because there is a battery backup which actually helps the computer to increment the clock even if the machine is switched off. So there are some functions for which you need battery backups. Okay. Otherwise, most of the options are given into the read-only memory section. And there are some portions which can be modified by the user in the BIOS program. Okay, where you can select that whether your first device will be a secondary storage device or a CD-ROM drive or something else, or an USB drive. Okay. Now, once you give those options, it actually gets configured. So that BIOS program will check to that particular device. Now, when you link to those devices, say for example, you have options given. My first checking will be secondary storage device. Second checking will be, say, USB device. Third checking will be a CD-ROM drive. Now, for each one of these options, there is a basic driver program. Okay, you can call it a loader program. Driver, actually driver is not a loader, but in this case it's a loader. What it does, it basically loads the operating system from the hard disk if you have given the option 1. It loads the operating system from the pen drive if you have given the option 2. If you have given the option 3, it may load it from the CD-ROM drive. So depending on what are the facilities available in your computer, you can set up those things. Now, these small programs are already written into the BIOS. Now, once you go to the secondary storage device where the operating system is loaded, the initial part itself, it has its larger loaders. Okay, so that so what happens? The Bootstrap loader loads the loader of the operating system. The loader of the operating system is there at the initial few sectors of the secondary storage device. So that's why when you buy hard disk, you will see that the boot sector of the hard disk or secondary storage device are very important, because if things get lost there itself, it is very difficult to recover the data. It's always the linking, it's not sequential. You'll have to understand, hard disk is not sequential, even though it rotates, but they are linked. Each and every sector of the hard disk, sector is a unit of memory. It can be 512 kilobyte or 1 MB or XYZ MB. So these sectors are actually linked. We will see that in the operating system, that how this linking happens. It's a kind of simply linked list kind of implementation. So one sector is linked to the next sector, that sector is linked to the next sector, that sector is linked to the next sector. This way it is done. So you can understand that if you somehow miss the initial part where all the sector informations are there, probably your hard disk will not be functioning. You need to do a separate process, like you need to format the hard disk so that your damaged sectors get separated and you create a new hard disk sector. Okay, so that I mean to say that the logical organization is done again so that it is usable. Otherwise the operating system gets lost. Okay, so there are various complicated things while loading the operating system. So some functions which are there in BIOS or bootloader, they actually need the initial part of the operating system, whether it is Linux or Windows, should follow certain protocols. If they do not follow certain protocol, the same loader cannot load a Linux operating system or a Windows operating system. You are right. Okay. This will be more clear, I believe, in your operating systems course. Okay.
Okay.
Now, let us come back to the hardware part. So now we understand that we need to store the program into the memory as well as we need to store the data into the memory. So your program is also in the memory. Let's assume that operating system has given you facility. Your program is here. This is your program for X equals to Y plus Z or A equals to B plus C. And here your variables X, Y, Z. So X, Y, Z, they are names, so you can always refer to them addresses. Okay. If you would like to now execute this program, what type of instructions are needed? So we started today's discussion on introduction to RISC instruction sets. Your program is here and data is here. What this program does, it actually takes the data from here, performs something and stores the result here itself. That's the basic operation that we are dealing with. So if the modality is something like that, we need some instructions. So can someone tell me that what type of instructions are needed for that? We are talking about RISC, reduced instruction set computer. I told you all the operands You know, in the last class, we already told all the operands involved in the arithmetic or logic operation must either be in a processor registers or one of the operands may be given explicitly within the instruction. The operand will be either within the instruction or in processor register. Okay. Now for this program, x equals to y plus z, where you know that all the operands are already in the memory, what you should do?
Load.
Yes. So we need the instruction load. So typical format of load is load followed by destination followed by source. So more specifically, you can say load processor register followed by memory location. So in RISC 32 MIPS 32-bit architecture, both are same. RISC is a generic name, MIPS is particular design. MIPS 32 architecture, load instructions are usually written like this: load R X. I'm giving X. There may be many registers. X, comma, RY. Okay, where this is the destination register, this is the source, this is the source base value given in a register, and this is the offset. It may be 16-bit. It's a 16-bit offset actually. It's a 16-bit offset. 16-bit value explicitly given. So how can I write it? An example: load R2, comma 200 R3. What does it mean? It means the content of R2 is loaded with a value that is stored into the memory whose location is this. This is the base register. So you can probably now guess that why we have used this indirect mode. There is a reason for it. You know, often we use array. So this can be the base address of the array, and by the help of X, we can mention that offset. That my starting address of the array is given in R3, and I want to go to the location 200 location from R3. This is a very well-known format that is used in a RISC machine, typical load instruction. This RX can be anything. I think I will come to the register number of registers there, but you remember this is 32-bit architecture. It has 32 registers, 16 general purpose registers, 16 special purpose registers. Okay, so this 32-bit machine, it has 32 registers, R1 or R0 to R31. Some of them are named not like R, they are named with some other names. Okay, some of them are floating point registers also, but you can assume that they are for the time being, you can assume that they are from R0 to R31. Okay. So for this particular instruction, if I write down the configuration, it looks to be like this. So I have register file here, RF. This is R0, this is R31. This is memory. R2, R3. I used R2, R3. So R2, comma, R3. So this location is basically 200 plus R3. This location. So what it does? So R3, let's assume that R3 content 100. Okay. And the value here is, say, for example, 400. Initially, R2 contains 500. Okay. And we execute this program, or we execute this instruction. This is initial condition. Initially, R2 equals to 500. 200 plus 100 location contains 400. This is memory. R3 contain 100. This is my initial condition. After execution, what happens? The content of the memory location. What is the memory location? 300 memory location. Why 300? Because my base is R3, which is 100, plus an offset 200. I mentioned it offset. So the address is now 300. Content of this address is 400. Will be loaded into R2. So this will be replaced by 400. This is what happens. After execution, R2 equals to 400. R3 equals to 100. Memory location 300 is containing 400. This is what happens.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, I think there is doubt in notation. Like you
Ah,
have
for-
written bracket
notation-
over R3.
Yeah, notation, there may be doubts in notation. Yeah, right. I may be wrongly using some notations like third bracket, another thing you are talking about, no?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that may be something wrong, which I am not actually following here. RTN, register transfer notation, I am not following. Okay. What I'm trying to say that this is a memory location. Okay. This memory location contains 400. Okay. And these are explicit values. R2 contains 400, R3 contains 100 after the execution happens. Before that, R2 was containing 500, R3 was containing 100. Okay, this is what happens. So now you can say that this particular register R3 has a special role. It is acting as a base. If you just change this 200 to 204, you get the next integer. If you make it 204 to 208, you get the next integer. I mean to say, you get the next address. This is 304. Next address is 308. I told you this is basically 32-bit machine. So every memory location is of 4 bytes. So load is an instruction. Now you may not get a similar instruction in this particular format in 8085. That's why I told you this is a RISC processor. This is a RISC processor and an example taken from MIPS 32 or RISC 32 processor, 32-bit processor. If you look into books, you may find these instructions are written in a different way. Like in books, you may find an instruction like load R2, A. Instead of this one, they may write it A or B or C. But these A, B, C are addresses. How these addresses are calculated in RISC processors? Like this. There will be one base address and there will be an offset. If you would like to directly access the first location, the base itself is a variable. If the base itself is a variable, then what will be the format? Can someone suggest? I gave an example. If the base is a base of an array, but if the base is a single variable, then you can do like this: load R2, 0, R3. That's it. But that ensures that you have a standard load format. The load instruction is not standard. The instruction name, then destination, then an offset, then source. This format we want to make it uniform for all load instructions in a RISC 32-bit processor. This is the instruction and these are operands. Now in the operands we have further, this is source operand and this is destination. Now further in destination you have offset and base. So this is your offset, this is your base. Now we have generalized the load instruction. Load R2 0 R3. Load R2 X R3. Load RX Z RY.
So R2 is source or destination?
Oh, sorry. There was a mistake. Thank you. This is destination. This is source. So this is loading something from memory. Reverse order, when it happens, store. Store, then Rx, comma Z, Ry. Here this becomes your source. This becomes your destination. So in books, you may find this entire portion like they are called as A, B, C. Actually, these are addresses. Now, how these addresses are actually calculated? We have an offset and a register value, which is the base register. So if we understand load, it is very to understand store. So these two are primary instructions to exchange values or to transport values from memory to the processor and processor to memory. These are the two instructions. In RISC in architecture, these are the only two instructions which can be used to transfer data from memory to the processor and from processor to the memory. There is no other instruction in RISC. There is no other instruction to facilitate data transfer between processor and memory. Either you'll have to use load or you'll have to use store. So this part, is this clear now? Very simple format. You need to just remember these two formats.
What is ADC?
I mean to say that in books, you may find they are writing instruction like this. Load R1, comma A. Store R2, comma B. I told you that this A actually means this. B actually means this.
Okay.
Okay. They are memory locations. How this? So when you write the exact actual instruction in a commercial processor, you'll have to write in this format. There is no meaning of A, B, C. Okay. This is just for description. In books, you may find it is written store R2, comma B, load R1, comma A. Actually, this A means this is an address of the memory. How the address of the memory is computed in a RISC machine is like an offset plus the base address. So the format for writing is offset, first bracket, base address, base register, first bracket closing. That's it. So in calculation, what happens? The content of this register is added with this one. This becomes the address. And the content of that address either gets loaded or gets updated, depending on the operation, whether it is load or store. If you understand these two instructions, half of the RISC instructions are done. Because they are, that's why it is called load store architecture. These two instructions are extremely important. We started with an example A equals to B plus C. A is in their memory, B is in memory, and C will be also there in memory. Now I shall introduce the arithmetic instruction, and then we will write the program for A equals to B plus C. Now arithmetic instructions are very simple. Remember, I told you all operations involved in an arithmetic or logic operation must either be in processor registers or one of the operands may be given explicitly within the instruction. There are two options. Either you do add R1, R2, R3, or you can do add R1, R2 has 100. Only these two options. There is no other option. There is no other option. Either you add these two registers and store it here, or you add one register and one explicit value. What it does here? R1 equals to R2 plus R3. Here R1 equals to R2 plus 100. That's it. There is no involvement of any memory here. There is no involvement of any memory here. Now you may say that what will be the value of this one? This one can be maximum 16-bit because your instruction itself is 32-bit. You require something to represent this, to represent this, to represent this. So there are only a few bits left. So this offset or the second operand can be maximum 16-bit. When I will show you the encoding of the instruction, you will know that why this is 16-bit, why this limit is also 16-bit. Okay. Arithmetic instructions are very simple. Now with these three instructions, we can now actually perform the operations. Let us now write the program for A equals to B plus C. So we have the A equals to B plus C. Now let's assume that the memory addresses of A, B, and C are something like this. This is base, say 200. Location, okay. From the base, let's say this is 204, this is 208, this is 212, this is 216, this 220. I'm all writing in decimal numbers. Okay. This is 224, something like that. Assume that our A is here, B is here, and C is here. Some values are there. Let's say 20 is here, initially 20, initially 50, here it is 70. So what we want to do? A equals to B plus C. If these are the initial conditions, you know that if B equals to 50 and C equals to 70, you want A should be 50 plus 70 equals to 120. So this should be 120. How it is done? So when you write a program, you write like this. So assume that your R1 is the base and R1 equals to 200. Okay. So what do you do? Load R2. You need to load B. B means this is 0 offset, this is 4 offset, this is 8 offset, this is 12 offset, this is 16 offset. So 16 R1. What you do next? Load R3. This is 16. This is 20. This is 24. This is 28. Please check this offset whether I'm doing correctly as per this diagram or not. But what it does, it brings the value R2 equals to 216, R3 equals to 228, and you do add R4, comma R2, comma R3, then you do store R4, where I need to store 8. And then a halt. So this becomes my program. Now do one thing, take 5 minutes time. I want to do you to take your pen and paper, do something like that. Say A equals to B plus C plus D. Write the program for that and show me the code. Take your pen and paper, write the code for this one with these instructions only and show me the code.
Sir?
Yes.
Yes. Sir, don't we use hexadecimal notation anywhere in this? Hexadecimal notation.
I'm not using hexadecimal. We are all
Okay, sir.
So you can choose your locations, but I want you to give me a solution for that.
So for add, can destination be one of the sources?
Yes.
Is it
No.
valid?
Yes. Yes. Destination can be one of the sources.
So add R2, R2, R3 is allowed.
Yes. Yes. It's allowed. Actually, add R2, R2, R2 is also allowed. If you are able to manage them, it's fine. As long as data is not lost for your particular purpose, you can do it. If anyone is done, can share your screen or share the code so that I think someone has, Jagdish has written it. Let me share this with all of you. Yes. So this is the code what he has written. A equals to B plus C plus D. Load R2 8. Okay. R3 8. Add R2 equals to R2 plus R3. Right. Okay. Load R3. Okay. 24. Yes. Good. So yeah, good. So he has minimized the use of number of registers. You can look in, this is a good solution. He has minimized the number of registers to write the code. If you look into it, this R2 holds the value of B. R3 holds the value of C. You do the addition operation. using R2 equals to R2 plus R3. So then R3's function is over. R3 can be reused. That's why he has reused R3 here itself. Again, he loads the third operand, which is D, into R3, and R2 was storing the partial result. So now again he is adding that value with R3. You get the value of A plus B plus C into R2, and that R2 gets loaded into the stored into the memory 0 plus R1. Very good. Anyone disagree with this solution? Anyone has any doubt about this solution? Please let me know. Okay, good. I think Sushant has also given a solution. His solution is
Same like the
same. He is also given a same solution. Good. Any difficulty in understanding these things? Please let me know.
Sir,
Huh.
like these offsets are kind of like how we have variable names when writing a C code. Like the assembler will memorize the offsets.
No. Offsets you'll have, because you are the writer of the program now. You need to know that where is
sir.
your memory.
Sir, I am writing an assembly and I am seeing the memory.
Right.
But like,
absolutely, what I got your question. What you are saying that when you write in C, that's why the compiler actually does it. What the compiler does, compiler actually allocates these values of A, R1, R2, and R3. You do not need to understand them, because compiler will know that where is the memory locations which are free. That will be given by the operating system. You do not have any knowledge about the physical location of the memory. Absolutely right. Okay. So once these locations are defined, they will be passed to the assembler. Okay. Actually, compiler gets these memory locations and it actually converts the high level code into intermediate notations where the compiler gets the addresses from the operating systems that currently this location of the memory is free for the current process. Okay. So it gets the addresses, and from there it can consecutively allocate or randomly allocate. It depends on how the compiler is implemented. As a user, you need not worry about it.
So while writing assembly code, we can assume that we can see the memory, like.
Yes, exactly. So while writing assembly code, you are actually doing the job of the compiler. You are acting as a compiler. Compiler is an intelligent program. I told you that compiler is an intelligent program which actually knows that which are the memory locations available. That's why it finds out those locations. Now here you are writing the program by your hand. You must know that where is the memory location free, because you are writing by yourself. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, how the program can be sequenced. So we have already looked into the program is written. So if we now further move into this direction, so we look at that instruction execution. and a straight line sequencing. Now, why I'm saying straight line sequencing? At present, we are only executing in straight line. Okay. So the code that you have written here should be stored into the memory. Now let's take an example of the code written by any one of you. Let me take it. Sushant's code. He has taken different set of registers. So what he has taken? Load R2 comma. So I will write load R2 comma 12 R1. Then next one is load R3 comma 16 R1. Then what he has done, add R2 comma R3 comma R2. Then what he has written, load R3 comma 20 R1. Then he is using add R2 comma R3 comma R2. Then he is using store R2 comma 8 comma R1. Then it is halt. So if the location of this instruction is I, this will be I plus 4, this will be I plus 8, this will be I plus 12, this will be I plus 16, this will be I plus 20, this will be I plus 24, and so on. And your locations may be here. This is J, this is J plus 4, this is J plus 8, this is J plus 12. Here you may have B, this is A, this is B, this is C, this is D. So accordingly you can find out the values of J so that it matches. The memory is like this. So this becomes your code segment. This becomes your data segment, part of the data segment. So if you try to recollect, when I was talking about every process gets a memory location allocated by the processor. Okay. So it is basically this allocation. I have only shown the code segment, data segment. There are other segments also. Heap. Okay, there will be also the special locations to store operating system related information. That's called a process control block. So as an operating system, what it provides these links. What is the value of I? What is the value of J? Because these are all relative. You don't get absolute value while you write the program. So it is the job of the compiler to provide these values. Where from compiler will get? Compiler will obviously get it from the operating system. The logical values you will get. The physical value where it will be loaded while the program is getting executed, that will be done during runtime. Because This program, while you are writing on the memory, they may be in a different place. But while it is executing, it may be in a different place. So that's why there is a difference in the physical address when the actual code gets executed. What I am writing here, it's logical address. It's logical. That logically, this instruction is 3 instruction prior to this instruction at I plus 12. That's a logical relation. Now physical value, when you will get it? When you know the value of I while the physical memory, while the instruction is actually stored into the hardware memory, while it is residing, so that it can be fetched. Then you need the value of I. That's a physical location. So whatever we are doing it on pen and paper, or probably whatever the addresses you see printed in your C program, they are actually logical addresses. All program addresses which you see, like you print your address in your C program, these are not physical addresses. These are logical addresses. Logical addresses with respect to its own program and in the current location. So it has various segments: code segment, stack segment, data segment, extra segment. Each process has its own segment. These two will be clear. What is logical and physical? It will be more clear. I just introduced the terminologies here so that you get acquainted with the basic concept. While I am writing on the paper, say I'm writing my halt instruction is 9th instruction from the beginning. That's the kind of logical linking. It's not physical. Because I do not know the actual address of halt when it will be stored into the memory and when it will be executed. Because this address will go to where? Can someone tell me where these addresses will go?
Register.
Which register?
Memory.
Program
No,
count.
it's not memory. Program counter.
Program counter.
It's program counter. These addresses, you require physical addresses when you load them into the program counter. And that will be only decided when this program will be loaded by the operating system into a specific region of the memory. Because today you are running this program, operating system gives you physical address location 100 onwards. Tomorrow you run the same program, that 100 onwards location may not be free by the operating system. Does it mean that your program will not load? No. The program will be loaded from a different location. So the offset will change and all the physical addresses will also change. But program can only get executed if you know the physical address. That's why we call this logical address. Logical address, we are happy with that. We know that this is our logical address and we are happy. Our all things will happen within this logical address range. When it gets executed, the CPU needs the physical address. That physical address, so logical to physical address translation is done at the last stage while the code is loaded and the scheduler dispatches the code to the processor and the program counter is loaded with the first physical address of the code. Tomorrow, the same logical code will be loaded from a different location. So the physical address will change. But tomorrow, you run the code and you print the address, you will get always the same address. Why it is possible? Because the addresses which are returned to the user through your program, those are logical addresses. There are ways also to print the physical address, but we should not be bothered about at this stage. The exact physical address, to know that, operating system provides certain functions to know that what is the exact physical address. But why should we be bothered about it? Because that's the reason the operating system is there. It will take care about the physical to logical and logical to physical translation. But we must know these two types of addresses. So this is instruction sequence execution and program sequencing.
Sir, can you again say which thing does the logical to physical address conversion?
Which?
Like what thing or it does the logical to physical?
When you see the program, it's a logical address. Okay. When the CPU sees the program, it's a physical address, as simple as it is. So that's why I have used I plus 4, I plus 8, I plus 2. Somebody is asking me that, are we acting as a compiler or an assembler? Yes, while you write this program in 8085 machine, go to the 8085 machine. There is no concept of logical address. Everything is physical. We are explicitly using the address 1000, 2000, 3000 up to FFFF. Those are physical address. But in larger systems, we don't know that when my program will be executed, where from it will be executed. I have no knowledge. That is the reason operating system provides a logical address space for every program, and that logical address space is fixed. When you talk about 64-bit OS, 32-bit OS, do you know what is the meaning of this? These are logical address spaces. If it is a 32-bit operating system, a program can have maximum addresses of 2 to the power 32, which is 4 GB. So in a 32-bit operating system, your program can be as large as 4 GB. And in a 64-bit operating system, it is too much. You do not need to calculate it. Now, you have written a program. I have written another program. Somebody else has written another program. All are given the same logical address space, 0 to 4 GB. What does it mean? And your original memory may be only 2 GB. Your physical memory available, or maybe 4 GB. Let's assume physical memory is 4 GB. You have 5 programs which are logical addresses are given as 4 GB, 4 GB, 4 GB, 4 GB, 4 GB. So do you need 20 GB of physical address? No, it's not possible. That's why what the modern operating systems do, they divide these address spaces into small segments or pages. And those pages are loaded dynamically. You do not need the whole program together, or not every program requires this 4 GB address space, but it is reserved. The entire address space is 4 GB. Okay. So how do the address space, if it is 4 GB, you know that hexadecimal 8, then F, 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 F. This is 4 GB. 32-bit, the lowest address, 32-bit address. Your program can be written assuming any one of these addresses. But when it will be actually loaded into the memory, it is up to the operating system, depending on which portion of the physical memory is available, it will load it. So that's why these values are very important. Am I able to make it clear a bit? I know that things will be, it requires further illustration, but at present, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This concept will be again discussed in architecture as well as in your operating systems. Okay, but I introduced here itself at the beginning just to ensure that you have the concept. Because when you are dealing with 8085 in the laboratory, there is no concept of logical address. Everything is physical. You write an instruction like LDA 2000. Now this address is not logical, it's physical, because that hardware kit you are using, and you know that this 2000 location is free. There is no operating system there. This is your responsibility to ensure that this 2000 location is free. Otherwise, if you try to access something from this location which is not there or which is occupied by somebody else, then you may get a wrong thing. That is the responsibility of the person who is writing the code to ensure that this address is valid address and this is the desired address you want. Whereas in advanced machine, like in today's machines where operating systems do it, there is nothing that user can explicitly write like this. User will at max write like this. If he is comfortable, he or she is comfortable in writing assembly program, then operating system will convert these addresses into the physical addresses. Okay, I have spent a substantial amount of time just to explain this one, because I want to avoid you describing all instructions one by one, because I feel that if the base is clear, the next part will be very easy for you. You can simply read the instructions. I will just list down the instructions. You shall be able to understand them. That's why I have spent a substantial amount of time here itself, just with a simple example. Only 3 instructions. There are 10-12 instructions in RISC-32. Other instructions, because if your concept is clear here, you can simply read those instructions. Easily you can understand. Okay. Any doubt up to this point?
Sir.
Ah.
Sir, here the logical address space is just a conceptual thing, or is it located somewhere like the secondary storage or
It is not located. It is a concept only. It is only a conceptual thing.
Okay, sir.
It is only a conceptual thing. But every program generates the logical address. The conceptual thing is converted into numbers by the operating systems. Okay. But when it gets executed, it again converted to the physical address. For example, if you write a C program and you declare a variable, okay, you can print the address of the variable. That address is a logical address. It's not a physical address. The physical address, you can also know the actual physical address when the code gets executed. Okay, but that will be varying different times the code is executed. You can actually try this, how to print the logical address and physical address. I think C program, logical address, you can always print it. Okay, just printing the address. For physical address also, knowing the physical address, operating system supports some commands. So today you run the code and you try to see the physical address, you may be getting a value. Tomorrow you run the same code, you may get a different value. But logical addresses in both cases will be same. Okay, because physical address depends on at the time the code is getting executed, what is the availability of the memory. See, memory is a big chunk of locations. It may not be possible that tomorrow your code is loaded from here and today it is loaded from here. It is possible. So the physical addresses will change, but the logical addresses I plus 4, I plus 8, I plus 12, I plus 16 will never change. These are relative locations with respect to the 0, 0 location. Now logical address starts from the 0, 0 location and it ends with FFFFFFF. So if the I plus 2 instruction is stored somewhere in between, it will always remain from 0, 0. So your I equals to 0 there. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think we introduced very critical concepts today, so I will not advance it further. Let's rest the topic advancement. I just will make it open for discussions. See, I'm not explaining subtraction, multiplication. Those are simple things. Okay, that's why probably when I will introduce the assembly language code, I will not explicitly describe each and every instruction. You can easily do it by reading those manuals. Okay, but how the instructions are executed, the sequencing, this is more important. Okay, like formats of the instruction may change from platform to platform, but their execution, the way they are executed, they will not change. So we need to understand that. That is the reason I'm spending more time here. Anyone? Any doubt? Okay, so
today we will be doing assembly language in lab.
Yeah, today we will be doing assembly language, and today there will be assignments.
Okay.
That's why I told you go through the instruction set. I cannot describe the instructions one by one. Okay, I have provided those documents. So today you shall be writing the codes on 885. Okay, using simulators. So all of you must be ready for that with your simulators. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you then. I will stop here the class and